The first district that most people are most familiar with is the River Corridor District. We have a district called Fort Concho Historic District, and then a third sort of specialized area for signage would be for home occupations. The River Corridor area is distinct because the majority of the properties in this area either have river frontage or are very close in proximity to the river. And so when you're dealing with signage, there's a lot of specific impacts on the environment that you have to anticipate. One of those, of course, deals with the lighting emitted from electronic signs. The efforts are to keep the corridor itself relatively free of any sort of night pollution to let people enjoy the natural environment. And so further in that regard, we try to encourage signage that is more in keeping with sort of a natural and historic type of feel, less more of a commercial corridor sort of feel. People tend to come downtown for entertainment and nightlife to some extent, yes, but it's also a lot about the environment. The Fort Concho Historic District is also very specific in nature. It's the area that's encompassed by Fort Concho, and because of the age of the structures in this area and the types of activities that go on in this area, the intent is to keep that less of a commercialized location and more of signage that is of a wayfinding type of character that helps people find their destinations without taking over and distracting from the historic nature of that site and how special that is for San Angelo. The last specific area would be any sort of residential district. We have more and more people that are working from home or telecommuting in their careers, and people starting their own business. And so the desire of the council in framing these regulations was to let those individuals advertise their business without intruding upon the residential character and feel of the neighborhood. Those three districts are unique in that they have the baseline sign regulations, and then they have additional restrictions built in on top of those. Each district is independent of one another, and each district has its own unique features. The original river corridor, as it was developed in the 90s, was basically all of the properties that had frontage on the river. That corridor has grown, and part of the rationale behind that is the recognition of people such as downtown merchants and people that are in the revitalization business that see a lot of similarities between the treatment of historic properties and the treatment of areas that have a natural type of setting. And based on that recognition, that corridor has been expanded in recent years. The River Corridor Master Plan is a planning document that was developed in 2005 by the River Corridor Commission at that time. And so in that plan, they make suggestions for the types of signage and other things that they'd like to see in the downtown area. And one of the biggest things is they strongly discourage the use of electronic signs. Again, it's an attempt to keep the river corridor in a fairly natural type of setting without a lot of distractions and lighting that pulls your attention away from some of the features that we've invested a substantial amount of money as a city into putting together. I think we tend to see more signage for people that have some sort of niche or specialized service that someone might be looking for. We have seen everything from people that perform genealogy research, people that work on computers or specialized types of equipment. Those types of people are the ones that we typically see that need signage. When you're looking at other types of home professions, like people that do accounting work from home, might have a law practice out of their home, you don't see as many signs for that sort of business because that's a business that people tend to seek out on their own. Regardless, however, of whether or not they need a permit, they do require special approval. And the approval for most of these items is administrative in nature. There's not a fee associated with it. It's really a business day or two at most for that process. So it's really not an additional long drawn out process. It just gives the city staff the opportunity to make sure the sign is consistent with the regulations for that specific and special area. I think from a planning perspective, the ideal signage is signage that draws attention to a business and lets you know that where it's located and that it's there without, number one, overwhelming the driver or the pedestrian, taking their attention away so long that it's dangerous for what they're doing. In addition to that, I think ideal signage is signage that is incorporated into the design of the site, either architecturally or with a color scheme that is consistent. You tend to, as planners, we tend to try to look at signage based on the character of the area and realize that not all areas are one and the same. I think the biggest way that you can see signs detract aesthetically is when you're dealing with signs that are in disrepair. Signs that advertise businesses that have long since left that location. Another way it can detract is when signs are not regulated along the frontage of a major road and every business decides to locate their sign in roughly the same location. You look down a corridor and you see nothing but signs. That clutter actually detracts from the message that you're trying to send as a business. It's easy for the pedestrian or the driver to become bombarded by signage and not focus on any of it. There are different types of signs that you'll see, especially in communities that have very specific regulations that show businesses how to illustrate their presence but are part of a larger scheme. There's an identity to the area, and those signs all are consistent in identity, but have enough uniqueness about them individually that that business is still featured.